You've probably heard a few of these things before. Drug addicts are bad people. Drug addicts should be punished. Drug addicts are criminals. Drug addicts choose to be addicts, and drug addicts are selfish. I'm here to tell you why, instead of drug addicts being punished, why they should be helped. And we should be the ones to help them. So have any of you ever met anybody or known anybody or have a friend or even a parent who has been addicted to drugs, alcohol, or anything like that? Would you want them to be put in prison? Would you want them to be held like an animal instead of helped? Would you want them to die because of what they have done, or would you want them to go into treatment so that they can be helped? Today, we're going to talk about why prison is ineffective and is not a viable option for our addicts, why treatment facilities are a more viable option, and my personal experience with addiction in my family. According to Skyward Recovery, 80% of the prison population is incarcerated for a drug-related crime, which is a non-violent crime, yet they still serve as much time as people who rape young girls, who have murdered people, and who have even murdered multiple people for no reason. 95% of incarcerated addicts will return to drug abuse if they are not receiving the proper help while they're in prison. 65% meet addiction criteria in the US, but only 11% of those individuals receive any actual help while serving their time in prison. There have been 4 deaths because of drug withdrawal in prisons because they are caught on the streets while they are in their high, and because they don't have help, they sit in their cells by themselves. They suffer from seizures, cold sweats, chills, and even worse. 4 of these deaths were people under the age of 22. And under 1% of inmates in state prison, only 1% of inmates in state prisons get help detoxing. And do you really think that's enough? If 4 people have died just this year, is that really enough for them? And these are my sources. This is why treatment facilities are a more viable option. Because $4.8 billion could be saved if even 10% of addicts were put in treatment facilities instead of being put into state prisons, which would go up to $12.9 billion if 40% of addicts were treated for what they're doing instead of being punished for their disease. Most drug offenders have admitted that they only commit crimes because they're either trying to find drugs or trying to get the money to buy them. Treating the illness that addiction is will lower the numbers of recidivism in the community and will not only help prisons be more affordable for the government, it will also help overpopulation and help violent acts in prison. 75% of incarcerated addicts are rearrested after less than 12 months of being released, according to Amethyst Recovery and AbsoluteAdvocacy.org. Now, from my personal experience, my father started doing meth when he was 20 years old. I was 2. I don't remember a lot from this time, but I do remember exactly what my family has told me has happened. When I was 2 years old, my father was arrested, and I was taken into social services because nobody knew where my mom was because she was busy working 3 jobs trying to support our family because he was stealing from our house, he was selling all of our things, and he was stealing money from my mom's bank account that she was using to pay for our food. He was in and out of rehab facilities for 3 years before he actually got arrested. He went to prison for the first time when I was 5 years old. Him and my mom got a divorce, and he threatened to kill himself while he was in prison. So they put him into a mental hospital for 2 days. Then he was released when I was 7. When I was 7 years old, he got part custody of me, and I would go over to his house for a couple weeks and then go back to my mom's during the summer. During that time, I had walked in on him shooting up. I had walked in on him and his girlfriend melting heroin in spoons so they could shoot up. And I had been put in the situation where I was 7 years old going on drug deals with my dad. He returned to prison again when I was 10. My dad has never committed a violent act towards anyone unless he was defending himself in prison. Because he was in Leavenworth State Prison in Kansas City, which is a privately owned prison, he was almost murdered. He had seen 3 people get murdered in the 4 years that he was there, and he was in prison with rapists, with murderers, with serial killers, and people who did a lot more than just do drugs because they couldn't help themselves. He was released again when I was 14. After that, I kind of gave up on having any hope for him because I thought that if I couldn't save him, then nobody could. I tried my hardest, and I started to believe that my dad didn't love me, but that was untrue. My dad loves me and my brothers as much as any of your parents love you, but he cannot help the fact that his brain is altered for the rest of his life because of the drugs he has done, and he cannot help the fact that because of the system, he was not able to receive the treatment that he needed to help him with these drugs. He returned less than a year ago. After going to prison, he had never seen a doctor when going through withdrawals. He had gotten into fights because he was protecting himself from other people who wanted to harm him. And he has been moved to 6 different prisons for his own protection because when he went to prison, the people that he was dealing with had people in prison trying to kill him. In the last year, I have received death threats from his dealers who he has not paid back. My mom has received death threats after being divorced from him for years. My grandparents have received death threats. And it got to the point where my grandpa had to sell his car and take out a loan in order to pay back these debts for my dad, so we would stop having to deal with this. If these people were just able to get help instead of being put in places where they shouldn't be put, then stuff like this wouldn't happen. My dad wouldn't have gone to prison 4 times. He would have gotten the help he needed, and he would be mentally stable, he would be healthy, and he would not be in the situation that he is now. And I would not be in the situation that I've been put in either. In conclusion, I talked about why prison is ineffective and is not a viable option, why treatment facilities are a more viable option for these people, and my personal experience with drug addiction in my family. So I hope you think about that, and I hope you really understand what some people are going through and why these people should be helped and not harmed. Thank you.